Hi, I need to preface this video by saying, please watch this entire video. Please don't skip through it. Don't use some AI-generated summary. Please watch this entire thing, start to finish, if you're interested in doing what I'm showing you in this video. Because the process I'm going to show you is a rather complicated process where a lot of things can go wrong, and I don't want you to just skip ahead to, like, the 5 minutes where I do the basic premise of this video, and then you copy me, but you don't watch the rest of it. So you do a bunch of things wrong, and then you get all these weird errors, and you go into my comments asking, hey, why is all this weird stuff happening? In which case, I'll just tell you, you have to actually watch the video, right? With that said, I'm going to try and keep this all killer, no filler, so you don't have much of a reason to skip around. So with that promise in mind, let's just get straight into the subject of the video. So, somebody sent me this game called Candy Tracks, and the great thing about this game is that this works completely just out of the box. I haven't modified this Shockwave movie at all. The only thing I've done is I've just renamed this folder to www.candymania.com so that it's the main check will pass. And if we just go to a completely ordinary standard director projector, and I open up this file here, we see it plays, and we can select a course, select a car, and it's a racing game. You know, you play with the arrow keys, it works, I can drive completely fine, right? And we can exit it with the escape key. So, why am I here if this game works? Well, apparently, at some point in time, there was an alternate version of this game that had different cars. And the person who sent this to me actually has the 3D models of those cars. They were Speed Racer themed cars that were meant to promote the TV show as Speed Racer. And we can actually see these 3D models in Director. So if I just open Director here, and I, create a new movie, and then if I just click and drag one of these in there, so let's say this one, right, click and drag it in to the cast, and look at that, it's a 3D model. We can rotate around it, cool, right? So basically, the person who sent this to me has these 3D models, but they don't have the original Shockwave movie that use those models. So what they want to do is they want to substitute these cars into this Shockwave movie in order to replace them with the alternate versions. Now, if you've worked with Director even a little bit, you'll know that you cannot directly edit this Shockwave movie. If you try and open it in Director, it'll just give you an error saying, you can't edit this file because it's a protected file, you can't edit Shockwave movies. And, 20 years ago, that just would have been the end of it. Editing this is impossible, right? It's supposed to be impossible anyway. But in the modern day, we have a tool called Projector Rays, which allows us to turn this back into a Director movie. And I've already downloaded that utility and put it in this folder, so all I need to do is click and drag this movie onto Projector Rays, and that will create a Director movie file, which we can now open. All we need to do now is determine what version of Director it's for. Now, I would usually assume that any given Director file is probably for MX2004. That's usually a pretty good assumption, and I have that set as my default. So if I just double-click on this here, we open Director MX2004, but unfortunately, no. The file is too new, so it cannot be opened in this version. Now, there are significant version differences between Director versions, so I would recommend always trying to open these movies in MX2004 first, because usually that's the best version to use if you can use it. But here we see we cannot use this version, the file is too new, so we'll try the next version up, which is Director 11.5. So I just have a bunch of versions installed, and I will try in 11.5. And if we just go to open this file, and would you look at that, the file opens. Now, if at this point you're following along and your director just crashes, it's likely that you have the Shockwave 3D bad driver list bug, which is a bug that occurs on NVIDIA graphics cards in Director. I plan on making a separate video about how to fix that, because there are a variety of methods to do that, and it's kind of out of the scope of this video. So, I'll put a link to that in the description whenever I get around to it. If you try and follow along with this and open this in Director and then it just crashes, right? But assuming that you make it to this screen, all we need to do now is go into the cast, which, if you don't see these squares at the bottom here, this is the cast. All you need to do is go to Window, Cast, and then, click on it to bring it up or hide it in this case, right? And if we just browse around the tabs here, we see this tab called 3D, and there's the normal cars, right? Here's the 3D models that we want to replace. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the thing that you should never ever do, right? I'm going to show you the basic mistake, the most naive way that you could possibly do this, right? And the way that you definitely should not do this. Do not copy this technique, right? Don't do what I'm about to do. I'm just going to demonstrate the thing that you should never ever do, right? So what somebody might see is, okay, here's like one of the cars that I want to replace. It's in slot number 17. I'm just going to delete this, asset here. And then I'm going to come into this Speed Racer Cars folder. Here's the 3D model I want to replace it with. Drag and drop that onto the same slot. There we go. And now all I need to do is save this file and hit publish, and we'll make a new projector, and it'll have the car replaced, right? And now let's see that in action. And indeed, we have replaced that car. It is now all gray instead of the blue car that it was before. Okay, so that is something that you should never ever do, what I just did, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to explain the better way to do what I just did, the smarter, the right way. So now I'm going to close out of this, and I'm going to, revert the change that I just did. So I'm going to delete this, director movie and this executable that I just made. I'm going to feed this original file back through projector rays so that I can get my, clean, unedited director movie back, and I'm going to show you what to do now. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new blank director movie, because what we're going to do is we're actually going to make our own custom projector. So we can just select create new director file, or we can also go file new movie. There we go. Okay, so what we want to do first is we want to create a script on frame 2. So this timeline up here, it's called the score, and if you don't see it, you can go to Window Score to bring that up, right, or hide it in that case. And yours might not be quite this tall, because I have effects channels turned on, but by default I think it's off, so it'll probably look more like this, right? And what you want to do is you want to click on this second cell here, or double click on it, and that's going to create a new script. It's going to bring you into this window here. Now, why the second cell? Basically, just trust me, bro. The first frame of a director movie is kind of special because the movie is not guaranteed to be totally loaded on that frame yet. So we want to create this on the second frame. So yeah, I'll just demonstrate that one more time, right? You're out here, you're in the score, you see this cell here, this second one from the left, double click on that, and we're going to create a new script, and it automatically writes a little like on exit frame thing for us to just get started writing. Alright, so what we now want to do is we want to write the word go. We want to write an open parentheses. We want to write the number 1, because what we're going to do is we're going to go to the start of the other movie. Now we write a comma, space, and then in quotes, we're going to write the file name of the movie we want to go to. So, candytracks.dcr, end quote, and parentheses. And then once we're done typing that in, it's good to get into the habit of clicking this little lightning icon up here, which is going to check our script for any errors. In this case, it does not contain any errors, so it passes. Now we're going to go to File, Save As, and we're going to save this. And I have a bit of convention whenever I'm doing anything like this, that I begin my file names with wrapper underscore. So I'm going to say wrapper underscore Candy Tracks, which is the movie we're going to wrap. This is just my convention, right? You can actually call it anything you want, right? But this is just normally what I do. So I'm going to say wrapper underscore Candy Tracks, and we're going to save that. And then just, for convenience's sake, we're going to go into File, Publish Settings, and we're going to set the name of the executable we're going to create to just be the name of the matching with the name of the other file. So we're just going to call that candytracks.exe. And I like to uncheck this box that says preview after publishing, purely because I find it annoying. What that does, you saw it earlier, is when you hit publish, it automatically opens the game, which I don't really like. I find that annoying, so I just turn that off. So hit OK, and then, go to save that. All right. So one final thing that we need to do before we can, actually run this and test this out. So I'm going to open another instance, another copy of Director here, and I'm going to open back up that candytracks.dir that we made earlier. And I'm actually just going to pin this to one side, so I'm just going to click and drag this window to one side. So now we have two copies of Director open. On the left, we have this new movie that I am creating, and on the right, we have the original game, right? And what we need to do is we need to make sure that our new movie uses all the same extras. So if we go to Modify Movie Extras, we'll see this fun little list here. And this is basically a list of this game's dependencies or libraries. It's basically like DLLs, right, that this game needs in order to function. And we want to make sure when we build our projector that it has all of these. So we're going to do the same thing on the left, modify movie extras, and as you can see, our list over here is shorter. It's missing stuff from this list on the right. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to remove all these extras that were in here by default, and I'm going to copy this list on the right. So I'm going to go Add, and then I'm going to just hit the I key to skip to the letter I, right? And there's iNet URL, right? So hit OK. Capitalization of it doesn't matter, right? It just needs to be matching items. There's netfile, netlingo, Shockwave 3D asset. And again, I'm just hitting the letters, I'm hitting the letter M on my keyboard in order to skip to the letter M there really quickly. So there's macro mix, Flash asset we need, which don't get it confused with Flash agent, you want Flash asset. And here we see that actually 2 extras got added when I added Flash asset, but just don't worry about it. Just leave it if that happens. All that matters is that our list on the left has at least the extras that are in this list on the right, but if there are a few extra ones that get added as we add these, that's fine, just leave it, right? So the next one we need to do is sound control, and then direct sound, right? So they don't need to be completely matching lists, but all of the extras that are in this list on the right, they need to at least be in the one on the left, right? So we can have extra ones here that are not on the right side, that's fine, but all the ones that are on the right, they need to be in this list on the left. So direct sound, and then SAW decompressor we actually already have because it got automatically added for us. And then core audio mix. Core audio mix is a bit of an odd one. It's not actually in the list, but if we just hit OK, and then we go modify movie extras again, we see it's automatically been added for us. That's just a weird Mac thing, and you don't really need to worry about it. Now, I should mention that if there are any extras in this list on the right that you can't find in the add menu, then what that means is you need to go out on the World Wide Web and find that extra and add it to your director install, right? So a very common example of this would be Havoc physics. There's an extra called Havoc.x32, which is really commonly used, but is not included with director. You're actually expected to go on Adobe's website and download it, and then add it into your director install folder, which, if that's confusing to you, again, I can make a separate video on how to do that, but it's not the focus of this video. But in the case of this game, all the extras are just included with director, so we don't have to worry about that. So, okay, now we have all the same extras, so I'm going to save this again, and now all we need to do is hit publish. And if I now open that executable I just made, it should just run. So let's see that in action. Alright, so we're just running the game normally, right? Now we haven't substituted the cars, but we're just running the game, basically like we did before. So, what was the point of doing all of that? Well, I will get there, right? Because, yes, this seems like it's a lot of effort for nothing, right? We could have just done this with the standard projector from before. You saw me do it earlier, right? We just selected the file and opened it. But there is a very good reason that we want to do this. However, before I continue, there are still a few more things I have to address. The first thing is that you'll notice it's a little bit jank. The window just kind of resizes when I open this. Let me show it again, right? It starts out small and gets big, right? I'll show it one more time, right? Small, big, right? It resizes when I open it. Another odd thing is we can actually resize this window, but it doesn't actually change the size of the game at all. Like, it just kind of sticks in the upper left corner. And in fact, we can even maximize the window, but the game just doesn't resize. It just stays, one size in the upper left corner. So, that's kind of weird. So there's just a lot of jank going on right now. So in order to fix all of that, what we want to do is we want to go into this movie tab. We're going to go into it in our new movie, and we're going to go into it in the original game as well. And what we want to do here is we just want to copy all of these details over. So 720 by 424 is the resolution of this game, so we're going to make that the resolution of our wrapper as well. Channels is the one exception. I would usually just make this 1, and that'll pop up this dialog, which we'll hit OK on, because for our wrapper movie, we don't actually need any channels except for this one script. So that's the one exception, right? You can just set the channels to 1, that's fine. But then everything else we want to copy as well. So the color we want to copy so that there's not a flash of it being just a weird color, right? And you might see this in a variety of forms, right? You might see it in like hexadecimal like this, but you also might see it, written like a number like 0, like just like this for white, or 255 for black, or some number, like in between for other colors, right? Or you might see it written like hexadecimal like this, just whatever form it is in, basically, just copy paste it in here, right? And then the palette, we want this to be the same as well. So this says system win, so we want this to be system win. You don't want this to be, you'll notice there is a Mac and Win option, and you might think, well, I don't want it to be Mac, I'm on Windows, right? But you do want it to be just matching whatever the game is, right? Because what this is describing is the palette on the system where the game was originally created. So you want this to match, right? So if this said System Mac here, then I would copy this over here to be System Mac, but it says System Win on this side, so I'm going to copy this to be System Win. Or any of the others, right? Whichever one it says over here, just copy it over here, right? Same for the preferred 3D renderer. This says DirectX 7, right? So I'm going to copy that over here. I'm going to say this is DirectX 7, right? So all the details should be the same, except for the number of channels. The number of channels, it doesn't really matter. I just set it to 1, usually, right? The other thing we can do is we can set up the display template. So we're actually going to ignore the display template of the original here, and we're just going to make our own display template. So, for the display template, I usually like the game to be centered, but I always turn off resizable, because as you saw, there's just not a point to the window resizing, right? Because when we resize it, it just doesn't actually resize. So, that's pointless, so we'll just turn off resizing, right? Similarly, we'll turn off the maximize box, because again, the game doesn't actually maximize when we hit the maximize box, so that's just confusing. So we just turn it off, right? And then the final thing is, if you want, you can set like a nice title for the game. So, this game is called Candy Tracks. So we can go up here and we can call this, Candy Tracks, right? And that'll give the window like a nicer title bar. So now that we've made all those modifications, we can save this again, we can hit publish, and now all of that jank that we saw before should be gone. So let's see that in action. So yeah, let's open this up. And as you can see, now the title bar, it's no longer just the file name, right? It shows like a more nicely human-readable name. We cannot maximize the window, which is good because it didn't work anyway, and we can't resize it, which is good because it didn't work anyway. And of course, the game itself still works. Okay, so get to the point. We can slightly tweak the window appearance to make it look slightly nicer. But what was the actual point of doing all that? How does that, replace the cars? Well, because now we can use that script that we wrote earlier to do a lot of work for us. So here's the thing, right? So if we open up the message window, which if you don't see this window, you can get it by going to Window, Message, and clicking on Message, which will show or hide it, right? There is this command we can run called import file into, right? Just to remind you, earlier I imported the 3D models, and the way that I did that was just by clicking and dragging them onto the cast, right? I did it like this, right? And then I could open it and zoom it around and whatever, right? But there's an alternate way we can do this. If we go into this message window, right, this one here, and we type in import file into, then, an open parentheses, and we say member, and I'm just going to pick one, so member 3, right? And then we give the path of one of the models. So speed, racer, cars, backslash, and then I'm just going to copy the file name of one of them. So let's say this one, right? Paste that in there, and then, closing, quote, closing parentheses, and hit enter. You can see that now the model has shown up. Let me demonstrate that one more time. I'll delete it, and I'll run this command with the enter key again, and there it is. So we didn't actually have to click and drag it in. We got some code to do it for us, right? Well, we can actually paste that into our script now. So to demonstrate that, right, oops, I accidentally moved it, accidentally bumped it. So if we now go into our script again, right, I'm going to take literally that line that I just wrote and paste it at the beginning of the script, and I'm just going to write a halt so that we don't actually do this bit on the end, right? This go won't happen anymore, just to demonstrate this, right? So if I now click the lightning icon again, and I save this, and now just rewind this movie to the beginning and hit play, we will see that as soon as I hit play, the model shows up. Let me demonstrate that one more time. So I'll delete that. I'll rewind this again and hit play, and our model is back. So we've gotten some code to automatically import this model for us. Now, here's the interesting and fun bit. I've put this import file into before this go statement, but what if I were to put it after? Well, the interesting thing is this go does not stop the execution of this script. So what's going to happen is we're going to go to that other movie, the Candy Tracks file, and then this import file into is going to happen in the context of that movie. So we're going to import the asset into the cast of the Candy Tracks movie that we're going to. Even though it's a Shockwave movie, we can modify it this way, right? So, if I just, quickly open that back up, let me actually pin this to the side again, and open that movie back up. Now, we don't actually want it to go to cast member 3 here. That's just going to end up in this internal cast where it's not replacing anything, right? But if I go back to this 3D cast, we can see that 3D car generic is car number 17. It's member number 17, right? 15, 16, 17. So that's the one we want to replace, and it's in this cast called 3D. So in order to target that particular member, I'm going to say we want to replace member 17 of cast lib 3D in quotes. All right. So let's, now hit the lightning icon again, and then we'll save this, right? And now we will go and publish that, and we'll test that that works. Okay, so open this back up. And what do you know? There's our gray car. Okay, so think about this, right? Now we're going directly to this Shockwave movie, and we haven't actually changed this file at all, right? But we're still replacing the car with our own because we've written our own wrapper to do it. And this is great because not only do we get to keep the original movie, so we don't have the lossy compression, recompressing problem, but also, perhaps even more importantly, this documents our changes, right? It's kind of like the difference between inline patching versus hooking in other games, right? You can, in theory, just, hex edit an executable, to change a bunch of bytes around, to change the instructions of it, and patch in a bunch of things in like x64 debug and whatever. But it becomes, quickly very difficult to keep track of all the changes that you've made. Whereas this is more akin to like hooking, which is generally, the preferred approach for anything more than like just a few bytes of change, right? So this is, a much more flexible approach, and it creates this clear line of separation between the changes we're making and the original game, which is nice, right? If you're the actual game developer, you don't really have to worry about that, of course. You'll probably have like a Git or something that's tracking all these changes. But if you're making modifications to an already published game like we are here, then it becomes very nice to have this clear line of separation of, here's our changes and it's in a completely different file and the original remains totally unmodified, right? So using this technique, we can replace all of the cars. Now, what I could do is I could just copy-paste this line a bunch of times and, change the numbers, right? But that's, it's fine with this number of cars, but if you had, 100 of them, then you wouldn't want to do that, right? That would be kind of tedious. So, it would be nice to have some kind of, loop, like a for loop that would sort of do this operation for us. So that's what I'm now going to show you how to do next in this programming language, which, by the way, is called Lingo. This is the programming language that Director uses. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a list of all of the cars that we're going to replace. So I'm going to put this back on the left, and I'm going to bring up this list over here. And I don't actually know what order these are meant to be in, right? So I'm just going to kind of take a guess. The only one I really know is that generic is supposed to be in slot number 17, right? So I'm going to get rid of these extra import file into calls here, which let me scroll over there. Delete those. There we go. Okay, so the first thing is to define our list of cars. So let's just do set cars to, and then I'll just create an empty property list. And this is basically like your JSON or your standard map or your dictionary or whatever you want to call it, right? Basically, the keys are on the left side of this colon character, and then the values are on the right side. So I want this generic car to be member number 17, so I'm going to say 17 is going to be 3D car underscore generic, right? And then I'm just going to do this for all of them. So if you notice when I look at this, at the original layout of the game, generic is actually in the last slot. It's in slot number 17, and there's a bunch of stuff after it. So I'm just going to put these other cars into these empty slots. So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right? I'll just put them there. So let's do that. So slot number 10, let's say that is going to be 3D car Grey Ghost. Sure, why not? And then number 11 is going to be 3D car Mach 6 or Mach 6. And then I learned this embarrassingly recently. If you type a backslash here, that allows us to then hit enter so that we can separate this list onto multiple lines, which normally would be considered invalid syntax. You normally can't separate these lists onto multiple lines. But if you put a backslash on the end of the line, then you can. So that's what I'm going to do. So 3D car Mach 6, and then we'll say that 12 is going to be 3D car Shooting Star. 13 is 3D car Snake Whaler. Sure. And we'll separate this again. And then car number 14 is however you're meant to pronounce that word. So, yeah, that. I've never watched the show in question, just so you know. But, so now we have our list of cars, and now we just need to actually loop through them, right? So I'm just going to verify, yeah, I've typed that all correct. Okay, good, good. So, now I'm going to say repeat with... this is a repeat loop, which is how you do a loop in Lingo. So repeat with I equals 1 to the count of cars. And by the way, in Lingo, lists are indexed starting at 1. So, everything starts at 1, not 0. So repeat with I equals 1 to the count of cars, and then we're going to get the number, like the property here. So set prop to cars.getProp at I. That'll give us the number, like 10, 11, 12, and so on. And set car to cars.get at I. That's going to give us the actual name of the car, like 3D car, Grey Ghost, and so on, right? So we get those, and then we just need to do our import file into. So we're going to say member prop, because that's our number, of castlib3d. And then here, where we're doing this string, I'm going to, in the middle of this, put the name of the car. So we want to separate this with ampersands. That is the string concatenation character in Lingo. And we're going to get the name of the car here, right? Just the variable car. Paste that there, right? And now that's going to import the car from that location. Now we're going to just write end repeat in order to end that loop. And I'm just going to trim that white space off the end of the function there, just to keep it clean. Recompile that. It appears that we've typed that all correctly. So, by the way, this save and compact option, it basically just saves it and then tries to minify the size of the file a bit. So you'll often see me hit that instead of just save. So with that script in place, let's publish this and test it. Now, as you'll see, this won't actually work, and I'm going to explain why. But just, watch what happens, right? Okay, so let's open that. Now, you'll notice all of the cars are still gray. So, that did not actually replace all of the cars. Well, why is that? Well, because if we look back at the game that we're trying to modify, remember, these slots are all empty. They've all been removed, so we're not actually replacing anything. So, if we go back to this internal cast, and we just, right-click on it and go to cast member scripts to open it up, and then we just hit Control F, and we search for one of the vehicle names. So, I believe it was 3D car generic, right? And we just search for that in any cast, right? And hit find. And here is the problem, right? So you'll see that all of the vehicles are marked as 3D car generic, except for one, which is marked as 3D car tops. So basically, what they did is they pulled out all of those models, right, and they just replaced it with 2 models. And then they changed this list here to have just the 2 models with different skins on them. So this is, not what we want. So we're going to try and fix this. Now the problem is, with this, is that this is in code. And code is the one thing that is slightly difficult to replace through this method. And to explain why, we have to kind of forego projector rays. So let me go back to, the game folder here and go back to our original Shockwave movie, and I'm going to show you an alternate method of opening it. So if I go into Director, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my extra called Movie Restorer, and what this does is this allows us to just directly open the file in Director, and we don't actually have to use projector rays. So if I use this extra that I made quite a long time ago, we can now just open this Shockwave movie directly, which it would normally never let us do. And if we do that, what we see is that all these scripts are just blank. There's no text in them, right? And how can that be? Well, it's because I told you a little bit of a white lie about this lightning icon earlier. So, if I go back to, our script here, what I want to show you is that basically this lightning icon is really important because the text in this window is not necessarily representative of how the script is actually going to behave at any given time. So to demonstrate that, I'm basically just going to pop into a new movie here for a second, so I can create a bit of a contrived example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a script here, which just displays Hello World, right? And I'm going to compile that. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to create another script that'll execute after like 3 seconds. That'll just go back to the beginning of the movie. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the script again, right? And just watch what happens when I hit play. So when I hit play, of course, we get our Hello World pop-up. And then after a few seconds, we should see it again. There it is again. So it's just on a loop, right? So now, watch what happens if I edit this. The edit didn't immediately show up, right? I added Hello World 2 to this, but it's still just showing Hello World. What about if I type a 3? Same thing. A 4, right? Keep changing the message. Add like Hello Mars. Right? It still just says Hello World. Now watch what happens when I click this lightning icon. Okay, click the lightning. And will you look at that? The alert has now changed, right? If I now edit it again, still says just Hello World, Hello Mars. I can completely remove the Hello Mars now. right? It still says the same thing. Now I click the lightning again, and it's updated again. Now it says hello world again. Alright, let's stop that. So basically, what I'm demonstrating here is that it's possible for this, script text and the actual, behavior of the script to become unsynced, right? Untethered from each other, right? So it's not necessarily the case that the text that you see in this window is actually representative at any given time of what the script is going to do. And that's the property that allows all those scripts to be blank in the actual Shockwave movie. So when you see that Shockwave movie, and let me open it back up again. The Shockwave movie, the original unmodified one, right? When we open this up, all the scripts are blank, right? And they're actually blank, right? The script text is just unsynced with what the script is actually going to do. The script is still there. It'll still behave, the way that it's, been set up to do. But the script text has been removed, right? The text is gone. It's just blank. And this is the way it actually is in the Shockwave movie. So when we run this through projector rays, right, and we get all of these scripts back, then it's basically looking at the behavior of the script and trying to guess, okay, it probably looked something like this when it had text, right? Because all of that text is stripped out of the Shockwave movie. It's not in there anymore, right? So all of this text here, it's just a guess by projector rays. It might have looked nothing like this originally, right? So let me, I closed that instance of director that had the wrapper open, but let me open that back up. Okay, so now we're back in our wrapper that we were writing, right? So I've just explained why scripts are kind of difficult to modify, because in actual reality, when we go to, candytracks.dcr, all these scripts aren't actually there, which means we cannot just edit this text. We cannot just, be like, okay, here's the script text, just change it to this, right? So we can't just edit it to be like this. However, we are actually in luck. This is actually quite easy to change because all of this, these list items with the car names, this is in the start movie handler. And this is just kind of trivia. You just kind of have to know this from experience. But there are 4 handlers that are kind of special. Prepare movie, prepare frame, start movie, and begin sprite. Those handlers happen underneath this go call, as in, when you call go here, that actually directly calls prepare movie, prepare frame, start movie, and begin sprite. So, if we go here and we see, oh, this is in start movie, and it sets up these variables, that means that this variable here, with all these names on it, this G vehicles are here, that is already going to be defined on the next line after this go, and we can just edit it. So, what we will do now is we'll say global G vehicles are, because it's a global variable. It's denoted by the G, but we can also prove it, right? If we go up to the top of this and we just Control F it, there it is. It's in the list of, global variables that's up here, right? So, G vehicles are, we can just access that list, and now what we can do is we can just add that to our for loop here, right? Our repeat loop. So, what we want to do is we want to get, I into that list, right? And then we want to get my member, and we want to set that to a new value. So my member, and then equals cars. We want to set it to car. So publish that. Okay. So open that up. Yeah, and there are the cars. Okay. yeah, so we've successfully swapped out all of the cars. So we can hit play, and you know, you can see all the labels are wrong, but we can change that, right? They're all in that list. So here's the, you know, the cool speed racer car.
Ready, set, go!
And there we go. And, you know, we can play this like normal. Alright, so as you've just seen, what we have now managed to do is we have performed this entire, you know, modification that we want to make, this substitution, just completely without ever touching the original file, right? We can now close this, you know, Project Arrays movie. We can get rid of the movie that we made in Project Arrays and just have the original file and our executable, right? And we can just launch it from this executable, and it just modifies it on the fly, right? So that's great, because now this documents what we want to do, right? This documents our changes, which is fantastic. There's that clear line of separation I was talking about before. And then I just want to take a brief moment to talk about publish settings, because there's also a bunch of interesting things in here that are important to understand. So, as you saw, I published this game in windowed mode, but Director does have an option to publish in full screen. Something I want to emphasize is that it's not necessarily the case that you should just pick whichever one would be your preference. You kind of need to consider the game when you consider it, when you want to figure out like whether it's a good idea to have it be in windowed mode or full screen. So I'll show you an example of a game that doesn't work very well in windowed mode. So here's an example of a game that doesn't work very well in windowed mode. This game is called Alien X, and if I just hit escape here to pause, and if I try clicking on this X to close the window, and I'm clicking on it right now, clicking on the X does not do anything. And this is actually quite a common thing with Director. There are ways to work around that, but the point I want to make here is that when I hit escape to pause the game, right, and bring up this menu, there is a quit option, and then on the main menu here, there is a quit button, and this button actually does succeed in closing the game. So, what I want to point out is a very easy way to fix the issue of clicking the close button on the window not working is to just make the game full screen. Because then there will be no title bar because it's full screen, so you will think to hit escape, to click quit, and then use the working quit button, right? This is clearly a game that was designed with full screen in mind. So basically, when you are deciding whether to make your projector windowed or full screen, something you have to do is test the game and then kind of consider if it's a better user experience in full screen versus in windowed mode. So basically, what I'm saying is that you should really consider the context of the game in question. You should test it and just make sure that it works well in windowed mode. And, you know, if it doesn't for whatever reason, like the close button doesn't work, or it has, you know, an issue when the window is not centered, especially you should really test if the game still works if the window is not centered on the screen, then you might consider making it full screen just to make life easier for yourself. It is sometimes possible to work around those problems if you know, like enough lingo to like understand what the problem is and try and actually, write a patch to work around it. But very often, the easiest fix is just to make the game full screen, especially if it was clearly designed to work that way. Another interesting option here is animate in background. Usually I just leave this on. However, some games will have issues when they are minimized to the taskbar. And what this controls is whether the game is paused when it's minimized to the taskbar. So if a game crashes or has an error when you minimize it to the taskbar, you might consider turning animate in background off, because that will cause it to pause when you minimize it, and that will eliminate that problem. So that's just another thing to potentially bear in mind. And then the last kind of interesting thing is under this Files tab, we have this option to compress the files, which I usually do turn on. This is just going to make the projector, slightly smaller with, in this case, basically no trade-off, because we don't really have any images or sound or anything in here that would take a long time to decompress. So I usually turn this on, at least for rapper movies. So replacing a script's contents, right, I didn't really get into that, right, because in this case we just happen to be lucky. We can just edit the variable because it's already defined. There's quite a number of ways that you can actually, work around that limitation and quote-unquote edit scripts. In fact, I showed one in a previous video about a game called Operation Save. I showed a method that you can use in order to, sort of edit the behavior of a script, but without actually touching it, just using, adding a new script, right? Just an additive thing, right? So you can go watch that video if you want to see a potential way that you could work around not being able to edit the scripts. If you're having difficulty with, how do these commands work? How do you even learn this? A big help is the Director Help manual. So if I just go to Help and I choose Director Help, that'll open up this PDF here, and this is the scripting dictionary. And this is where you can find information about how all of those commands work. So if I type in, for example, import file into, and I search for that, I can find that in here, and here it is. So here's a description of exactly what that does. So if you're wondering, how do I know any of this stuff? Where's the actual documentation? This is it, right? This is the actual documentation. So this is a very long document. This is 1,000 pages long, right? So I can't expect you to read every single function that's in here, but, just read, the introductory stuff in here, right? And if you're having any trouble with a particular function, you can look it up, or you can Control F through here if there's a particular thing that you maybe want to know how to do, right? I just showed, how to replace assets, which is a basic thing that you might want to do. This Go trick, I did not come up with this. Credit where it is due. This was discovered or invented by Mozzie at the Flashpoint project, and they're very smart, and we all just kind of copied it and built off of that. So, credit where it's due. I didn't come up with this. Just use it all the time. So, just a couple more interesting things. You might, if you think about it, you might realize that this is basically just what SPR in Flashpoint does. Is just an extension of this idea, right? It's basically just automating this process of creating a wrapper, because what it allows you to do is just set, the commands. It just takes in as an argument the commands that you want to run after this go. So SPR has a script that's very much like this, where it just goes to the other movie, and then everything after the go is just, whatever you passed into it as an argument, right? And so it'll just execute whatever you tell it to. So it's very much just like an automation of this idea. Oh yes, there's one other thing I should mention as well, which is that this won't work in the Shockwave browser plugin as is. So I just focused on creating a desktop projector, but if you try and publish this, as a Shockwave file, as a DCR, then this is not actually going to work in browser. And the reason why is because in Shockwave, you actually have to download this candytracks.dcr file first before you can go to it. On desktop, it's fine to just go to this immediately, but on Shockwave, you actually have to preload this movie first. So, in future, I might show how to do this in such a way that it would be compatible with the browser plugin. It just introduces a lot of complexity, so I've just kind of skipped over that. But if anyone anywhere is interested in that, then I guess you could leave a comment, and then I might show like how to get this to work in the browser plugin correctly, right? But yeah, so that's basically the Go trick, that's the technique, that's all the things that you need to like get right in order to get that to work. If you have any further questions and that definitely were not answered in the video because this is by no means comprehensive, feel free to leave a comment in the comments section below. Alright, and I will see you next time. My other playthrough series is still continuing. I will be uploading a new part to that very soon, so look forward to that. Bye-bye.